Welcome to the AT&T teleconferencing service. Enter your attendee ID number, followed by pound. Your line has been muted. Press *6 to unmute your own line.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning. Okay, so just a quick note off the top, which is the big priority today is to make sure we're pushing in every show and on every platform towards the town hall tonight at 8 p.m. That'll be hosted by Anderson Cooper in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I want to make sure that in the shows leading up to the 8, 5, 6, and 7, we're doing live cut-ins and live promos, and everything's got to be focused towards that. Okay, so with that, let's start with Matthew, please.
Good morning, Jeff. So chaos in the messaging over masks and vaccines undermining confidence in the public health response. I know we'll hear from Washington in a moment on Trump versus Redfield and the Barr comments and more. But on this suggestion that Redfield was somehow confused by questions, the vaccine question in particular, which was something backed up by a CDC PR statement, Redfield was clearly referring to the summer and fall of 2021 as the time when a vaccine, his words, would be generally available, even read this question back in testimony for clarity. And on masks, Redfield clearly wasn't confused and later tweeted support of the best defense from safety measures like masks. Trump saying there are problems with masks. Where will all this go today? Fauci acknowledging this confusion in a Wall Street Journal talk last night, won't speak to the contradiction, says he wants to avoid more confusion. Even the WHO weighing in on this morning without mentioning Trump by name in a new statement saying it is important that we have consistent messaging from all. And of course, all of this Trump versus CDC director chaos hours after Caputo taking leave after his CDC attacks. All this as the U.S. is poised to cross 200,000 deaths, probably this weekend. We stand this morning at over 197,000 dead and over 6.6 million cases. Digging a little more deeply into the numbers, I want to focus first on the number that is considered the main leading indicator, positivity rate of tests, and that is up nationally. The U.S. average positivity rate is up near 6% after declining in the past few weeks to the mid or low fives. Obviously, this is a nationwide average, some states much lower, but many states in double digits. The highest positive percent states, 15, 16% range, like Alabama, Idaho, Kansas, Mississippi, and Wisconsin. When it comes to new daily cases on the CNN map, 23 states are up this week, 21 steady, 6 down. Hospitalizations, though, are down, are half of what they were in July, now at 30,000. The thing that has not changed in a while is the U.S. average of daily deaths, 800 to 900 a day, and the U.S. average of daily new cases, just under 40,000. In Florida, the numbers are declining, but still at 2,000 new cases a day, and Miami-Dade's mayor announcing the opening of movie theaters, bowling alleys, concert halls, and other venues. We've got Nick Valencia in Atlanta on the various regional lines. Then on schools, I think the busy big thing to watch in the coming days, the run up to New York City's in-person openings Monday, the largest school district in America. All the union insistence that the city isn't ready, but the mayor saying we're starting on Monday. It will not be a perfect start. We're making a lot of adjustments in the weeks after we begin, says thousands of substitute teachers will be ready. The story in Massachusetts with parents knowingly sending their infected children to school and dozens having to quarantine as a result. And some teachers in the Atlanta area, Fulton County schools, threatening a walkout at noon over their safety concerns about in-person openings. We've got Biana on the education threads. Then on the college side, obviously, Scott Atlas's op-ed yesterday pushing colleges to reopen and stay open even when they see an increase in cases. We've got another one of these big sort of football home game fan situations at the University of Georgia, October 3rd. And then Omar Jimenez with a piece that debuted this morning, getting inside the chaos around college quarantines, particularly the University of Wisconsin, where 1,400 students tested positive since August. And at one point, students were told to quarantine with 2 hours notice. On the public health front, a lot of vaccine news separate from the drama over the messaging, a clearer picture of how this will play out. Moderna's CEO just told CNBC this morning that the company expects to know in November whether its vaccine works, another company with that message, and that it could deliver 100 million doses to the U.S. government in the few months of 2021. This tracks with Redfield and Fauci yesterday, both saying November, December timing on vaccine results, and the HHS outlining the administration's strategy for free distribution and early limited supply for healthcare and essential workers and high-risk cases. Fauci also made the point last night to the Wall Street Journal that if too few Americans get a vaccine, like, for example, 1/3, it will not significantly help reduce the spread. We've got Sanjay and Elizabeth available. And then on the heels of the Big Ten reversing course with an abbreviated season, the Pac-12 announcing that some areas clearing the way for contact practice and a return to competition. And we've got the wrap pieces, Nick Watt for 4 and 6, Erica Hill for 5 and 7. I'm pausing there.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to Washington and the Washington side of COVID, please.
Hey there, as Matthew noted, the president undermining the scientists and science. This is the ultimate slapdown as he pulled the rug from under his own CDC director, Redfield, who was under oath yesterday, saying he was confused, misunderstood, and said incorrect information about masks and the timeline for the vaccine. Big questions here in Washington about how long Redfield can hang on at the CDC. Of course, no lifeline from Fauci, as Matthew noted, and add all of this to the drama of Caputo's sudden leave of absence, and the president making it clear it's all about politics, blaming blue states for the high U.S. death toll yesterday. Not true. And if you add Bill Barr's striking comments last night, comparing the virus lockdown to slavery, calling it the greatest intrusion on civil liberties in American history. Lots more to say about what's going on with Barr and the DOJ in just a bit. On the stimulus, the president undercutting his own party, who want a smaller number. He says he is now open to a bigger number. McCarthy is up at 11:30 this morning to explain his way through that. As conservatives want to torch Pelosi to make a point, this vote to oust her will go nowhere, and actually it could be a potential boost for Democrats who need to find a way to get with Pelosi and Schumer. They are up at 10:45 this morning. I point you to Manu and Ted Barrett's reporting how the GOP is indifferent with a litany of Trump controversies as the election nears. And the White House confirmed that a fourth staffer has tested positive yesterday at the White House. We'll track the president, who leaves at 6:20 today for a 9 o'clock rally. It will be in a hangar tonight, and that is it for Washington COVID.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, I do think that I want to make sure that we're also paying attention to a couple other storylines. You know, in this Trump versus Redfield story, I think it's worth noting that he had Scott Atlas with him Fauci and Birx are not there as he does that. It's worth noting. And obviously the blue states remark that Trump made, if you take the blue states out of the death count, it's obviously an incredibly sickening comment. And I also want to note on COVID and education, what's going on in Baltimore, that Baltimore saying that only 65% of the students are logging in, meaning 27,000 students there are not present or accounted for. I think we should be looking into that. The University of Georgia is under fire for allowing football but not voting on campus. I think that's a good story. And then, I don't know where, Antoine, we want to deal with all of the Bill Barr comments, but obviously we'll need to talk about all of them as a whole in a moment. Let's go to international COVID and then business COVID, and then we'll open it up. International COVID.
Okay, the World Health Organization is warning of a, quote, very serious situation unfolding in Europe as infection rates soar across the continent. Weekly cases have now exceeded those reported at the height of the pandemic's first peak in March, more than 300,000 cases across Europe last week. So more than half of European countries have reported new cases increasing higher than 10%, 7 countries seeing their infection rates double. So quite alarming sort of news out of the World Health Organization. Scott McLean is going to be on that from London, where coincidentally 2 areas of the UK in the northeast have now gone into lockdown as more restrictive measures come in the UK. Elsewhere in Europe, still a focus on the vaccine, despite the CDC head sort of saying here in the US, saying there might not be the American public might not see a vaccine until next year. The Europeans are hoping to get one before the end of the year. So Germany's vaccine maker BioNTech is drastically increasing its production capacity, building new facilities as it aims to have its prototype drug ready to seek approval in October. The drug is already in phase 3 trials, and just a few days ago, the German drug makers got a huge $450 million boost from government funds to try and push that along more. So Fred Pleiken's going to be on that story. A complementary angle to that, while making a safe, and effective drugs one thing, delivering it hundreds of millions and possibly billions of doses another. There are more than 170 vaccine candidates worldwide, of which 8 are believed to be in the final stage of human trials. Anna Stewart takes a look at the manufacturing supply chains, how they're coming under increasing pressure. So while people may be developing the drug, how do you get the drug to people? So everything from glass vials to freezers to freight capacity is now coming under huge pressure. She looks at Pfizer, who's actually partnering with a company that Fred is covering, and how are they going to get their 100 million doses out to people if they do actually get that cleared by the year's end. So she's got a nice piece on the whole supply chain from manufacture through storage and onto delivery. In Israel, Israel's Ministry of Health said the journalists who are flying with Netanyahu have now been directed to go into quarantine. This comes ahead of the nation's impending lockdown tomorrow, first country to go back into full lockdown. The Israeli president has also apologized to the nation for the country's failures and the lack of leadership in fighting the pandemic. So Oren is following all lines on that and he'll be pushing ahead to tomorrow's lockdown. There's a good but grim story from Indonesia, where villagers who refuse to wear masks have been forced to dig graves for the victims of COVID-19. So there's incredible footage of these 3 middle-aged men and 5 miners in a rural area of Indonesia, where they're given this unique punishment by the local authorities. It's filmed from like 5 different angles, and it's all been released by the local authorities. We're getting other reports of people being forced to lie down in fake coffins to teach them a lesson if they don't wear a face mask. So Selena Wang is pulling all those threads together from Hong Kong. In Venezuela, similar sort of harsh government crackdown on COVID is leading to people who are even suspected of being infected. They're now being quarantined in government motels, completely squalid conditions, all against their will, essentially locked down in a lockdown. And many people are fearing the facilities more than they actually fear the disease itself. Lisa Suarez has been working for weeks on getting this footage from Venezuela, and she's put together a really nice piece on that. And then very lastly, just one glimmer of hope. After a long, strict lockdown, South Africa is preparing to open its borders for business and tourism at the beginning of October. The president says the country has, quote, soothed the coronavirus storm. They're starting very slowly, limited border posts opening, just 3 major airports accepting international flights. Everyone coming in will have to be screened and asked to install a COVID-19 mobile alert app. So Dave McKenzie has got that story for us, and that's where I'll leave it on COVID.
Thanks. Look, I want to just reemphasize the first thing that Mike said that I think is the real headline. The WHO warning that the situation in Europe is getting incredibly serious and parts of England now going into a very strict lockdown. I think it's just a story we have to revisit in a big way about Europe. Business COVID.
Jeff, good morning. U.S. stock futures right now down sharply, pointing to anxiety following the Fed's dour outlook on the economy yesterday. In the last hour, the U.S. government reported that 860,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment claims last week. This points up to nearly 30 million Americans receiving some form of unemployment aid. And as the White House continues to paint a rosy picture of the outlook, the data clearly painting a different picture. Yesterday, as I mentioned, we missed on retail sales. Today, we missed on housing starts, which has been a bright spot in the economy. We're 7 months into the crisis, $7 trillion in stimulus. The Fed's printing $120 billion per month, and rates are at near zero. Yet we are still seeing fairly high claims at 860,000 today. Economist Mohamed El-Erian messaging moments ago that the recovery continues, but at a pace well below what is needed and possible. Clearly, most of the claims that we saw early on were linked to the shutdown, but seems to think that there is deeper scarring going on in the economy. And of course, as Antoine mentioned, stimulus talks continuing to be stalled. We're checking out reports this morning that White House economic advisor Kudlow gaggling, saying that the U.S. economic recovery does not depend on government providing stimulus relief. That is against what everybody else is saying, including the federal chair, Jerome Powell. Christine Romans and Allison Cossack are up and available on that this morning. And of course, as I mentioned, Kudlow's assessment at stark contrast to Jerome Powell. Powell's worries on full display yesterday. He called the economic outlook highly uncertain and indicated that these easy gains for reopening the economy could mask deeper scars, and you're seeing that as evidence this morning. He also said twice, importantly, during the news conference, that wearing a mask and social distancing will help the economy recover faster. Christina Alessi has been up on that. She's also tracking Deutsche Bank, informing its 5,000 base U.S. workers, mostly here in New York, that they don't need to return to the office until July 2021. The move will accommodate parents who need to balance work and sporadic school schedules. And of course, this comes a few days after J.P. Morgan made headlines that it sent some of its workers home after they tested positive for COVID. Christina Leshy's up on that, and that is where we begin.
Thank you. So with that, let me open it up for any thoughts on COVID and the COVID coverage.
Hey, Jeff, good morning. It's Ben. Matthew mentioned a lot of the top lines already from Redfield yesterday, but as the back and forth continues between the CDC and Operation Warp Speed and Trump on the vaccine front, Redfield yesterday on Capitol Hill really offering Trump a solution for this before Election Day, which is wearing face masks. So he had a really interesting bite where he said he continues to appeal for all Americans, all individuals to embrace face coverings. If we did that for 6, 8, 10 or 12 weeks, we would bring this pandemic under control. We have clear scientific evidence that they work. And this just goes back to underscore the point that if we did this, Trump could actually get this under control by Election Day without a vaccine, which segues really nicely into a really interesting conversation I was having with Deb Goldschmidt about a very dangerous, I would say, conversation on Fox last night, where Laura Ingraham had a doctor on who was saying that we have decades of science and controlled studies showing that masks do nothing, which is obviously categorically false. It is like telling people that smoking cigarettes is safe. Number two, the doctor said it's dying away through herd immunity, also categorically not true. And number three, during the same segment, the same doctor saying that the IHME models have been wrong all along. And as everyone on the call will probably remember, we did a segment, I think it was last week, showing that the models, if anything, undershot where the deaths would be, making it even more horrifying to think about where we could be at the end of the year. Just really, really irresponsible and dangerous segments on Fox last night.
no surprise.
And just to add something to what Ben just said, Mark Meadows this morning said about masks, it's not something that's designed to actually make sure we don't have the coronavirus spread. That's Mark Meadows this morning. So just, doubling down on Trump, but contradictory to everything Ben said at the top about what the scientists are saying about how if everybody wore a mask, we could get this under control in 10 weeks. Mark Meadows saying exactly the opposite. It's not something designed to actually make sure we don't have the coronavirus spread.
It's shocking. Other thoughts on COVID?
I'd like to bring us back to education for a minute. I think the union activity that's about to really ramp up in New York and the other protests of teachers that Matthew mentioned and the numbers out of Baltimore tell a very important story for us to pay attention to, which is that unions, teachers unions, and they should have a very strong, organized platform, and it's very easy for us to cover. But I think 20 million kids in this country rely on school for free lunches. I know some of them still are getting it, but some aren't. Those underserved children have no one fighting for them in the same coordinated way. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to double down on lifting up the kids' stories, because it's the kids who are sitting at home, often not logging in, and have no one really in a coordinated campaign fighting for them in this moment.
Thank you, Rebecca. I totally agree. Couldn't agree more.
Hey, Jeff, it's Patricia. One quick thing. I went to Florida last week, and one of the things that I was really struck with is that the number of people walking around without masks on. And I know it's really shocking to us that this whole rhetoric about, Trump saying that masks aren't needed, et cetera. But for a whole swath of the population who gets their information from Facebook and Fox News, they don't think it's that big of a deal. And they really think that people who wear masks are nuts. I mean, my conservative friends thought I was crazy for insisting on always having a mask on. So I think it's something that that perspective and context is interesting, because they don't think it's a deal at all.
Right, but that I think you're exactly right. But I think that's Ben's point about why it was so dangerous, the conversation that is had on Fox News last night, and what Mark Meadows said this morning, and what Donald Trump said yesterday. I mean, that's what they're hearing, and that's what they're getting.
And don't forget what the Attorney General of the United States said, that the only thing more repressive than this people wearing masks is slavery in American history. So this is of a piece. This is their whole message.
Yeah. Just be careful. He didn't say masks. He said the lockdown. But it's the same point. I understand. Yes.
Thank you.
No, that's okay. I mean, the general point is right. Just let's make sure we got it right.
The point that I've made, it's been again a couple of times. It's sort of one thing to lie about a crowd size or other things like that are inconsequential, but these sorts of things pushed by the administration and by Fox, this will literally, no doubt, cost people their lives, and it is just unconscionable.
So this is the politicization of COVID. This is the politicization of masks. Those folks will say that CNN is scaring people to death and all of this stuff. And this is the point that I've been trying to make for years. We're not trying to be partisan on this. We're just trying to tell the truth. And just because they don't like what they're hearing, the facts are the facts.
Jeff, it's Adam. If I could on Barr, I think we really need to get to the depths of how insidious what he was saying last night was. And that was just what he said about him was just tip of the iceberg. But the comparison obviously to slavery, which is ridiculous in notion. But then he went on to start questioning the science behind the idea of lockdowns, which, I mean, we just heard in Europe how they're going back to lockdowns. It's a recognized tool to cut down on this spread. And he just completely attacked with no facts, obviously, the whole idea that even the task force was calling for to flatten the curve at the beginning. And the depth of what he was saying is really scary. And that was just tip of the iceberg. Antoine will go through the rest. I mean, he was just getting started with that stuff.
Look, to your point, what Bill Barr did last night and what he has become is insidious, and we should be calling this out. I'm going to
Jeff is saying.
So, hold on one second, David.
Yeah, sure.
Hold on one second, David. I'm going to ask Michael to pick up the rest of this call. I have to jump on something else, so Michael's going to take it from here. I just want to remind everybody about the Biden town hall tonight is the most important thing. Go ahead, David, and then Michael's going to pick up on the other side.
Yeah. I was just going to comment off that. I think that some sort of deeper dive, maybe even a show or long package about the totality of what Bill Barr is doing is in order, because it's not just what he said last night. It's his crazy notions of his power in office. It's the interfering with investigations. And this might be the most reckless attorney general we've had, in 50 years, if not longer. And he flies a little bit under the radar because most of what he does is interesting to lawyers. But I think a deeper dive in the entire picture of Bill Barr would serve everything well.
Yeah, I totally agree, David. And we've done that, but we need to do it again, and especially in the wake of last night. So we will get on that. We'll figure that out after the call for sure. I think it's absolutely right.
We've got Jessica Schneider filing on that for tonight.
Okay, thanks, Antoine. Other people have anything else about COVID and masks, or on the Barr conversation, since we've plunged fully almost into that now? All right. Antoine, why don't you give us the rest of Washington first and just expand on whatever further Barr information you have?
Yeah, we talked previously about Barr and election integrity and all the misinformation he was spreading. But what is happening at the DOJ and Bill Barr declaring himself now the ultimate authority, fully within his right to intervene? He's questioning the decisions of hundreds of DOJ prosecutors, comparing them to preschoolers. He's tone deaf to Trump's repeated calls to investigate his political enemies. He's asking DOJ prosecutors to explore criminal charges against the Seattle mayor over the police-free protest zone. So we've got Evan on the reporting end. Schneider will package this for tonight. And this segues into the ongoing fallout from the June clearing of Lafayette Square, where Barr was prominently there overseeing the operation. And this is Akasa and Manu have confirmed the testimony from a National Guard major that they explored the use of a heat ray that could have been used there in Lafayette Park in June. Add new reporting later today from Barbara, the Pentagon leadership, in terms of how the Pentagon leadership is dealing with the president. That's Esper on thin ice, and Milley concerned about the White House using the military. In terms of the DHS role in all of this, there could have been questions asked of Secretary Wolf today at a 9 o'clock hearing on the U.S. homeland, but he's defying a House subpoena to testify. That's from Alvarez and Sands. He will not show up. In terms of that, there is no evidence of a White House health care plan. We've been talking about this. Smoke and mirrors. Meadows is parroting Trump that a plan is ready, and he added that it will be ready in time for the election. He said through executive action and a legislative component. And I point you to McEnany's exchange with Collins yesterday, not wanting to get into who was actually working on this plan, and in a very flip way suggested to Collins that she go work at the White House to find out. And then finally, the first volume of Barack Obama's long-awaited memoirs will be out on November 17th, titled A Promised Land. That's it for me.
Okay, before I open it up on what you've just talked about, on a couple things, the Barr package that Schneider's putting together, where is that scheduled to air?
I believe it's the Leader Sit Room. Adam, do you know? It was one of the DC shows.
Okay, well, it should be on a DC show, and it should also be on Aaron Burnett.
Okay.
So would prefer either 4-7 or 5-7, but 4-7 might be my preference.
Okay.
Do we have any idea? Are we trying to dig and see, since he was out there, was Barr involved in the conversation on the heat ray, potential use of the heat ray? Are we digging on that to try to find out what his involvement was on the choice of potential clearing mechanisms and this dangerous, potentially dangerous?
We are. We're digging into the conversations.
Yeah, because Barr was the one who was directing traffic out there, so we should be in on that. And then just before I open it up, the one last thing is I will say about Wolf defying the subpoena and not appearing before the House. Once again, this is a suppression of information and obstruction, and there's just this tremendous list of these things that continue to go on, and the administration is just relentless in its blocking of information, suppression of information, hiding of information, and obstruction of either interviews with witnesses and or, again, information. So it's just over and over and over again. It's a really important story. I would highly encourage people to have conversations about this. Let's open it up to anything Antoine said about Washington or further conversation, especially about Bill Barr. Anybody have anything else?
Michael, I just want to remind on the Barr thing, one of the most egregious I think he did lately to be included is when he went on did his interview with Wolf, and he said that he told that anecdote about 1,700 ballots in Texas that were an example of voter fraud, which was a complete lie really about what happened there. And the people who were involved came out and said that is not what had happened. Just one of the very flagrant things he's done lately that I think we could bring back into it today.
Yeah, I also think his conversation about systemic racism with Wolf in the wake of his incredibly insensitive, doesn't cover it, outrageous comments about comparing the lockdowns to slavery. We have a lot of material from our interview and from other comments that Barr has made, but Wolf's interview provides a lot of context to things that were said last night. And as Maria said, his noting of that, in his eyes, voter fraud in Texas was totally untrue in how he described it. And all of this is part of what, David was suggesting, a larger Barr package about the many ways that the Attorney General is acting outrageously as the chief law enforcement officer in the country. Anybody else have anything on this?
Well, Michael, I would just say that it's great that we're going to have the package, but I'm sure the shows who are going to run the package are considering this, but I just want to point it out anyway. Having the highest level former legal authorities up and including former acting attorney generals or attorney generals, I know they're probably reaching out, but it just really, to highlight it for our audience, it really demands that we have people who've been in the position of authority reacting to what Bill Barr has become. And I would just hope that because of the outrage, and I have been speaking to a couple of them via email, and they are outraged. And but whether they'd be able to come on and express that, I don't know. But it seems we need a high-level panel of those to tell our audience why this is so damaging, and hope that from a booking standpoint that can happen.
Absolutely. They're all working on those types of guests. Absolutely.
But I think we should also remind audiences of the Loretta Lynch Bill Clinton tarmac meeting and what was made of that, and the extraordinary may have changed history. And that is, it would be laughable if it were not so tragic, the difference between that and what the actual Attorney General is doing now. Extraordinary.
Yeah, that's another good point. Another good point of context.
Michael, also another booking note. If shows haven't seen, Dan Coates has an op-ed today in the Times calling for a bipartisan commission sort of to oversight of the election. And he writes that our democracy's enemies, foreign and domestic, want us to concede and invent better voting systems, are faulty or fraudulent, which quite frankly sounds like a description of the president's own comments. But I don't know if he's available for interviews, but he's published this op-ed in the Times, and obviously there's a lot to staying coach about given the Woodward book too, so he might be out there.
Yeah, he would be a great booking. I think that's going to be very difficult to get, but he would be a great booking. And as you note, he never mentions the president in his op-ed, but he's referencing him constantly, or referencing at least his administration. Okay. Matthew, why don't we go back to you just for anything else on domestic, and then we'll try to punch through the rest of it.
Yeah, just three big things quickly. The wake of former Hurricane Sally, torrential rain all over the region, moving into other states. I can tell you it was a mess in Atlanta this morning. Sally leaving behind damaged homes and flooded streets. In the Panhandle, the first fatality, Orange Beach, Alabama's mayor telling our affiliate one person died, another missing. Months of rain in just hours, about 530,000 customers without power, and there are several other disturbances we're tracking in the Atlantic and Gulf. We've got Ed Lavendera in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and Rosa Flores in Pensacola. The Western wildfires, there's some progress in fighting the fires, but the air quality is just crushing and still a big story. That North Complex fire, where Dan Simon has been now one of the deadliest and largest in California history. 12 people still missing in Oregon, and Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco clocking in with the worst air quality in the world right now. We've got Stephanie Elam and Josh Campbell in Southern California at the Bobcat Fire. I mentioned Dan, and then Martin Savage in Oregon. And then finally, the deputy's ambushed story, the critically injured deputy now out of the hospital as the manhunt goes into its fifth day. The sheriff says the 24-year-old deputy still has a long road ahead. Both deputies face several surgeries. Investigators say they do have promising leads on the suspect, and Sarah Seidner stays on this one. And that is it.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Mike, anything else international?
Just a couple of things, Michael. So Russia-related new details from the Navalny camp confirm the outspoken Kremlin critic was poisoned by a bottle of water in his hotel room in the Siberian city of Tomsk. So this really puts the poisoning much further back than we thought when it was believed he may have been poisoned on the plane. His aides collected all the water bottles from the hotel room, took it to Germany for testing. They found traces of Novichok on those bottles. So Matthew chances on that story. In China, the scale of a bacterial outbreak at a Chinese pharmaceutical factory in June last year is just now coming to light. At the time, there were reports of 180 people infected by vapors from untreated waste from this factory. The factory was producing vaccines for animal use. And while there's no evidence of any human-to-human transmission, no fatalities, it now appears more than 3,000 people were affected. But again, this just raises more and more questions about why the full extent of the outbreak was not reported. Did the authorities try and cover up the mistake, and puts the whole transparency and efficacy around health and safety in China's drug area once again back in the spotlight. So Will Ripley is on that story for us. And then just very lastly, the Guardian newspaper in the UK has the story of another woman coming forward to accuse Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her, this time in a VIP box at the US Open in New York in 1997. The woman, who was 24 at the time of the alleged incident, would be at least the 26th woman now to make claims of sexual misconduct. Apparently, the president, through his lawyers, have vehemently denied these allegations, much like all the others. And that's it, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Before we go to politics, does anybody have anything about anything we've talked about? All right, let's go to politics.
Good morning, Michael. Obviously, as mentioned, everything for us is pushing forward to the Biden town hall in Scranton today. A town hall unlike any other you've seen, with the whole drive-in component, and it sort of gets at the very core of this being the coronavirus campaign, which you saw is where the battle between Trump and Biden stands at the moment. You saw Joe Biden late yesterday in Delaware saying that he does trust science, he trusts vaccines, he doesn't trust Donald Trump, and he says the American people should not as well. And then everything we talked about at the top of this call about Trump versus Redfield, Trump went into the briefing room and basically proved Joe Biden's entire point yesterday, and sort of gets at the whole notion of, once again, that no matter which way Donald Trump tries to alter the context for this campaign, it is the virus, obviously, that's dominating American life right now, and he can't get away from that. As you know, every week on Thursdays, we've been doing this project Jenna Just has been doing with our polling partner at SSRS and the University of Michigan and Georgetown, taking a look at what words are breaking through for Americans in terms of what they hear about Joe Biden or what they hear about Donald Trump. And the new release coming out today at noon will show again how coronavirus has catapulted back so front and center, obviously off the Woodward book conversations, and but everything is coronavirus and what Americans are hearing about these candidates right now, which is exactly not where the Trump campaign wants the conversation to be, which is why they used their convention week and the Kenosha incident to try very hard to move the conversation, and the country obviously is right back with coronavirus dominating everything. So that'll be out today as well. We don't see Joe Biden. Oh, we see Joe Biden briefly with his wife at 3:00 Eastern, doing a virtual Rosh Hashanah event before we see him at our town hall with Anderson tonight. Kamala Harris will be campaigning in Philadelphia today, focusing very much on courting the African American vote and the Latino vote in Philadelphia. So we'll see what comes out of those events. And the Biden campaign is continuing to roll out its paid media program, rolled out a new ad today featuring a Trump Biden voter, a farmer, Pennsylvania, straight to camera, basically explaining why Trump's handling of the virus has caused him to regret his 2016 vote and why he'll be voting differently this time around. Sort of obviously, it's one person in a Biden ad. It's not necessarily representative, but it is exactly it shows you in these battleground states where the Biden campaign wants to keep the message right now. It's on voters just like that. And I think that is where we start.
Okay, thank you, David. Anybody have anything on politics?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to, with the president rant yesterday in the briefing room about the unsolicited ballots, and then his tweets this morning saying what a hoax and a fraud the election is going to be because of the unsolicited ballots. I want to recommend that it's false about what he's saying. There's only 9 states, and David and Adam Levy can correct me if I'm wrong. There are only 9 states, 8 in the District of Columbia, that are sending out ballots to everyone, and none of those states, other than Nevada, is considered a battleground state. And so what he's doing is what his critics say he's doing. He thinks he's going to lose, and he wants to make sure everybody, at least on his side, know that the election was stolen. Unless I'm wrong, 41 states are only sending out ballots to people who are requesting them. So what he is alleging is totally a lie. And I do think that shows should consider taking what he said, pointing out which states are actually doing it. And of those 9 states, 5 are the ones that have been doing mail-in ballots for years. It's only 4 new additional ones, I think: Vermont, Nevada, California, and New Jersey. And so I really do think, without all the outrageousness that we're talking about today, this may be the worst, because he's setting up the country to have almost some sort of civil war after he loses because of what he's saying day in and day out, 50 days before the election. And it's all BS.
And Rick,
I
we
think
have a really good fact check about that up already that shows can refer to.
On digital or a package?
On digital. And Daniel's available, obviously.
Okay.
And Rick, none of those states are battleground states. So the states that David talks about so frequently on the call, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, none of those qualify as the states that you just described. They're not. You have to request mail-in ballots in each of the battleground states. So the states that are going to decide the election, the ones that are being contested, his rhetoric doesn't apply to at all.
Yeah, that's my point. Except for maybe Nevada, right, David Chalian?
Correct.
And that's the one he keeps referring to. But and he doubled down on it. But one thing he said yesterday, and I'm sorry to extend this, is he's fine with people soliciting for their own ballots. He made that, I don't know if he said that before, but he also said that in his tweet. So he totally negated his whole argument about the 80 million that they're sending out to everyone and anyone.
Yep. Chaos is his strategy, Rick. Anybody have anything else? Digital.
Hey, we had 29 million yesterday. Biggest story was Collinson on Trump's ABC town hall. More than 2.5 million uniques and a very high engagement time on it. Other top stories yesterday were Hurricane Sally, the coronavirus main bar, and the Scott Jennings opinion piece on Trump's town hall. Overnight, did really well. A story about the woman who talked about her dad's taco truck and how it only made $6 in a day. Audience is really connected with that. Right now, the Collinson story is leading our homepages is the top story, and you have approaching 10,000 uniques. Biggest video of the night was Caitlin calling out McEnany. And engagement-wise, our fact check of Trump at the ABC Town Hall, the lies in the statements, had high engagement time still. Today, we'll be all over the politics, all the stuff we've talked about, the GOP war on masks, the GOP total capitulation of Trump, and of course, the Biden drive-in town hall tonight will be all over on digital. Other stories that we will also stay on is everything on coronavirus, including the story of an Idaho church where the pastor in early May called parishioners to come in and not wear masks, and he and his wife and many others in the congregation are now suffering from and recovering from coronavirus. We talked about Indonesia and that extraordinary story. We have that up. We'll see on weather and fire stories. We have a really good op-ed from John Sutter on climate and the election. And I just want one final thing I want to call out. We have I want everyone to sign up for a brand new newsletter from CNN, and it is an entertainment newsletter. And Lisa Respers France is our lead on that, and it's a great, engaging read. So sign up today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. John.
Good morning, Michael. So Trump versus the CDC on vaccine timeline and masks. We're going to continue to keep that in the top spot. John Harwood and Jim Acosta splitting the day from the White House. We booked some former CDC officials just on the dangers of this, Dr. Richard Besser, Dr. Cyrus Shapar. And we're also going for some of those blue state governors to get into Trump's blue state versus red states statements from last night and taking a stab at that. Elizabeth Cohen will stay on the medical threads, the rising cases. There's just some new AstraZeneca reporting on the vaccine trials that just dropped, so we'll have her take care of that. Fred Pleitgen on the BioNTech Pfizer news that came out of Germany this morning. Dr. Peter Hotez and Anne Ramoyne punctuate that storyline. Omar Jimenez's college quarantine chaos package. We'll get to him live around that, both next hour and on Brooke. And we are going to build out a segment later today on the Baltimore schools. A third of the students not even logging in, and just what a crisis this is educationally there, and obviously we're seeing that in other parts of the country as well. From bookings to flag, Jim and Poppy just had the head of the Maine CDC on the wedding super cluster there, COVID cluster that killed 7. John King has Christine Brennan, a very strongly worded opinion piece in USA Today. Big Ten's decision to play football is the darkest day in the conference's sports history. And we are getting a student representative from University of Georgia up with Brianna on the storyline that was discussed earlier. The University of Georgia says it's fine to put students into the stadium for the football games, but it's too dangerous to do in-person voting on campus this fall, and trying to square that. Internationally, the European surging cases and the Israeli lockdown beginning tomorrow will hit both those lines and our whips. Evan Perez is going to look at the totality of just everything Barr had to say yesterday on sedition, the Seattle mayor blasting DOJ prosecutors, the comparisons to slavery. We have some former DOJ voices to begin to parse through all these different lines, Elliot Williams and Laura Coates. John King has former Deputy AG Donald Ayers, and we're going for the woman behind the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones, to really dig into that slavery conversation and that super offensive analogy that he made. We'll be doing a lot on 2020 race all day long, hitting Arlette signs from Scranton, a big push to the town hall, and really getting into how this will be so different than any town hall we've seen before. Next hour, we have John Meacham, plus Laura Barron-Lopez and Lisa Lair later on today to look at all the 2020 ankles and a look ahead to the Biden town hall. Boris Sanchez handles the National Guard whistleblower, the heat ray piece of that. This afternoon, we have the attorney for the whistleblower. We are going to take on Chad Wolf being a no-show at that House hearing, Ed Lavendera and Rosa Flores flanking Alabama and Florida for Hurricane Sally aftermath, and Champions for Change is next hour at 3 p.m.
Thank you, John. Washington.
Do you hear me, Michael?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Good. So today, Ryan Nobles has our White House donut, and we've also got Representative Lisa Slotkin joining us as well. We'll have a lot of political analysis with Nia, Abby, Ron Brownstein, and there's so much to talk about, and I'm sure more today, but obviously Redfield, Barr outrage, mailed ballots, and Slotkin's on the House Homeland Committee, so we'll get Chad Wolf in as well. Nick Watt has our COVID wrap, and Sanjay, of course, breaking it all down for us. Martin Savage packaging on fires, and we'll talk to Donnie O'Sullivan about the weaponization of memes. It's worked for the Russians in 2016. The Trump campaign seems to be unapologetically considering fair game this time around.
And in the Situation Room, we'll be following all the latest on this outrageous politicization of masks and vaccines, Trump versus Redfield and the CDC. All of this is we're poised to hit 200,000 deaths this weekend. The daily deaths still hitting between 800 and 900 a day. So we'll get to all of that, as well as the latest with school reopenings in the areas where the positivity rates are up. We'll do that with Watt and the Hill wrap pieces. Internationally, we'll get to this new warning from the WHO about Europe and Israel going on lockdown. Out of the White House, we'll see where this back and forth goes today between Trump and Redfield on the heels of yesterday's briefing. Atlas was there, Fauci and Birx were not. And we'll follow on these Trump sickening comments blaming blue states for most of the deaths. We'll also watch to see if he talks in the 6 o'clock hour when he leaves for his rally. We'll get to Barr and all of the outrageous comments from last night. If no one else is taking the Schneider package, we're interested. We'll also use Evan. And we'll be pushing heavily to tonight's town hall in both hours. Arlette will join in the 5 o'clock hour. Anderson will join us in the 6 o'clock hour. And we'll keep an eye on the fires and the aftermath of the hurricane. That's where we're starting.
All right, thanks, Ed. Anybody else have anything for today?
Michael, it's Sam. I don't know if Eric's on, but I just want to underscore tonight's town hall is really unusual. It is a town hall in the middle of a pandemic. but it is a drive-in town hall. There's never been a drive-in town hall in history. The questioners and the participants will drive up. It'll look like a drive-in movie theater. Some will ask questions from their cars. Some will ask questions from a microphone just outside their cars. But it's not only an important event because of the vice presidential nominee will be getting questions from voters, but it's historic and unique in the way we're doing it because of the pandemic. So I think in addition to the fact that we have Joe Biden, it's worth noting as we talk about the town hall that it is really going to be a special and unusual event.
Thank you for that, Sam. And that's why Jeff emphasized that he'd like to see live cut-ins from there, talking to Anderson when possible later in the day, but also just to see what it looks like and talk about that aspect of it, as well as obviously having Joe Biden with real people in Pennsylvania asking him questions. Anybody have anything else? Okay, push to the town hall. Push to the town hall. How many times can we say it? Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.